So this is a clip where they're talking about the abuse and idolatry of modern cult of sororities and fraternities. So I want to play this clip and get your reaction, Judge.
I sat there and I took advantage of 17, 18, and 19-year-old girls. So I'm not a victim. I brought over 4 lines and I abused 4 lines full of girls. I manipulated them. I sat there and looked these girls' moms in their face and told them that I was taking care of their kids, and I was sitting there abusing their children. All these people, oh my gosh, Epstein, and we should expose. No, we're about to expose you. They set up the altar and they put it at the front of a church and they desecrate the altar.
Whoa.
You would have to repeat the founders over and over and over again, necromancy. If you tell, you going to jail and you getting kicked out of school. Y'all should have walked away. We're implicated. If you got hurt that night, they would drop you off at the hospital and they would all come together and come with a corroborative story. You had deltas that worked at the police station, everything. We did that to 2 girls. We went under investigation and we all got in a room and lied and corroborated our story that we didn't know them. They had a thing called digging for worms that we would do outside blindfolded, where we would dig and dig and dig until our nails bled. Where if you was the girl that had the nicest hair on the line, they would put all types of concoctions and they would ruin your hair.
No.
Yes, they would. We ate dog food. The reason that they can get away with it is because of Hell Night. People are not telling the truth. It would be grace from God if I went to jail. Did we hurt people? What? We brutally hurt people.
No.
Old rituals, necromancy, we was doing spells almost every night, so your memory is gone. Ask people in the comments, majority of them cannot even remember half of the stuff that they did. It's 9 candles that you light in the Sigma, and they have 9 words, and each day we do a ritual to those words, and all 9 of those words are a blasphemous take on the 9 fruits of the Holy Spirit. It's a dark room. It has a red candle and a white candle because the deity attached to Delta is Minerva. Minerva is the goddess of wisdom, and we will light that candle to usher the spirit of the wisdom into the atmosphere. We need a female deity. Jesus ain't it. And they would take your hand and you would be hand in hand and say, I light the torch of wisdom. I invite in myself a new life force, which is Delta Sigma Theta. You walk away singing this little light of mine. We had God present. Yeah, you had God present so you could blaspheme him. You're sitting here saying to me, oh, this is a Christian liberty? Oh, nah. And we had to wash ourselves and say, I rid myself of all negative energy. I am refreshed, renewed, and I am reborn.
No.
Yes, we did. National process. Every person has done it. Every person has done it. We had to go give a gift at the altar. And we would have to light candles. We would have to give gifts. And you decide that you want to drop. You become an eternal pyramid.
It sounds like the people who know absolutely nothing about the subject, who badmouth, in addition to the frats and the sororities, they badmouth masonry, something that's about 5,000 years old in the latter instance. Now, the purpose for the frats and the sororities, more than 120 years ago, in the case of the first one, Alpha Phi Alpha, 1906, was to fight American apartheid, American segregation. The Klan was at its absolute strongest. There were people around who were in reasonably good health who had fought to perpetrate slavery in the Civil War and who were Democrats, 100% Democrats, who populated the offices of sheriff, mayor, county commissioners, city councilmen, aldermen, whatever, populated the halls of Congress, and they were about the business of keeping colored Negroes, blacks, Negroes, colored, whatever they were called in those days, in their place and treated like two-legged domestic animals still. So the fraternities and sororities were broken into 4 fraternities, that's cells, 4 sororities, that's cells. So if you got one, you couldn't get all of them. And they were given the purpose of masquerading as white Greek social organizations or black counterparts so that they could operate and traveled throughout the South and the rest of the country to do something about the rather horrible segregation that was being imposed, not selected by choice. The pledging was hard, very hard, and it was vicious because it's just like they do in the military with aviators. You get shot down, they don't want you to be so subject to being turned by your enemies. And they didn't want you to squeal to Sheriff Bubba and say what the rest of the people were up to and get a lot of people lynched, compromised, put in jail, brutalized, or anything like that. And I have talked to now deceased fraternity folk who did get captured during the civil rights era, and that part of the thing that they don't talk about, and tortured. Like when Emmett Till got killed, they sent down two alphas, A.W. Willis and Russell Sugarman, both attorneys, and a gentleman who was a photographer, Ernest Withers. He's got an exhibit here in Memphis and a permanent one in the Smithsonian Institution now. Withers took, he told me, 6 rolls of film of Till's body, which he didn't develop, gave half to each Willis and Sugarman. They took off to get back to Illinois and out of Mississippi, get the film developed. I think they stipulated they were going to go get it developed at a Walgreens up in Illinois and get the photographs to the governor of Illinois so they could get Till's body back, which happened. But Willis indicated that he got stopped by a Southern sheriff and held in custody and tortured for several hours. But he said it wasn't as bad as Hell Week. He survived and escaped, joined back up with Willis, and there were 6 or 7 cars that got shot up or burned up. People got wounded, but they never tell that part of the story. And heroically, these people put a heck of a set of jumpstart cables on what was going on when Till's body got brought back and exhibited up in Chicago by his heroic mother's dictates. And I met that woman too. She's a fine, upstanding woman, or was until she passed on. And you can get a lot by Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems, who was the designated family biographer. She's written a lot of books about that. So that's what this whole thing with frats and sororities was about, is to do what was necessary to stop that. You can look at Dr. Martin Luther King. You can look at
So how did he get from that to
Thurgood Marshall. That's what it's about.
I know,
And
but how did he get from that to what they're doing today?
this is because it's trendy, and you've got some little folk who did not get made in the way the fraternities and sororities intended that they be brought in. They got basically read in. Somebody got upset because they got pushed, and they wouldn't have cut it back when these fraternities and sororities were relevant because they wouldn't have made it through Hell Week.
But that's what I'm saying. So what was your Hell Week like? Because she was
It
basically
was absolutely brutal. I couldn't walk for 3 or 4 days.
Right, so then, but that was for the guys, and that clip was particularly talking about sororities for the girls.
Yeah, I know.
So how do we know that they weren't doing the same thing back in the day? You know, just doing something abnormal.
They weren't, because I know a lot of people who are deltas and AKAs.
Crossover. What was the girls' Hell Week like back in the day?
It was like sort of a milder version of what we went through. It was brutal.
Like, give me examples.
It's not my business to talk about it. And I'm not giving you examples of what they did to me.
Let me give this quick example, because my mother, and today is her birthday. when she went to college, Winston-Salem, in her freshman year, she tried out for a sorority. I think it was, I don't know if it was Delta, AKA, I don't know.
What year was it?
I don't know. She's 74 now or something. But anyway, so she said she didn't cross over because, during the, what you call it, initiation, the sorority leader sister, I guess they appoint you with a sister, but knock on her room door in the morning and say, you have to get up and make me breakfast.
Yeah, well, that's true too. You did that for the big brothers. I wound up meeting.
And so you talk about 5, 6, or 7 in the morning, and she was like, after a while, she was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this," and so she never crossed over or whatever. So,
well, we met Big Brother this and Big Brother that. Even met, and Kamala's not right about that. Her sorority can't claim the first vice president of the United States. The first member of a black fraternal or sororal institution was Vice President Hubert Humphrey from Minnesota. Lyndon Baines Johnson's vice president. He made Alpha back in the 30s as an undergrad, and then again as a grad student in the late 40s. So we had to meet Big Brother, Vice President of the United States of America, when he came through Los Angeles one time.
So let me ask you this question. Why are there so many Divine Nine people in?
There aren't Divine Nine. There's only the Magnificent Eight. Okay. The nine had nothing to do with what the organizations were created for. That's purely social. Okay. The so 4 and 4 were political.
Okay. Oh, okay. So is that why so many of the Magnificent Eight or Divine Eight are in politics?
Yeah. Martin Luther King was an Alpha. Thurgood Marshall was a frat man. You name anybody that was involved in that. All of the Tuskegee Airmen were members of frats. So you name it, that's the way to go, because you wanted to be part of the revolution that overthrew American apartheid or segregation. So you could exercise your own options.
I'm specifically talking about politics like Congress, Congressional Black Caucus.
Adam Clayton Powell, he was an Alpha.
So is it because that was the reason, one of the main reasons of joining a sorority or fraternity, black one, is to get involved politically?
Yes. In other words, one of the main problems that came out in the late 60s was the fact that you couldn't trust anybody. And too many of the people that nominally were supporting what you were trying to do were actually, up until the late 60s, when it just became, this is bourgeoisie. And on white campuses, the white fraternities and sororities were having complaints that came about because weaklings couldn't stand to be shoved around and get pledged hard. So that started spreading to the wrong kind of Negro who, in a world that was calling itself Afro-American and black, didn't really belong. But you see what happened in the late mid-60s, you couldn't trust anybody. You couldn't really have any organizational integrity or effort because too many people that nominally claimed to be doing stuff were rat thinking out the movement. And they worked for police agencies, the FBI. They were drug dealers, criminals who joined up so they could infiltrate and inform in return for getting criminal charges dropped. But when you had the sororities and fraternities that made people hard, you had a cadre of folk who had been through a similar rite of passage. And trust me, it was a rite of passage because it could hurt badly. And if you'd survived this, you became part of an organization that you were dedicated to, and you'd come to trust the people in the organization. So this carried over into politics, where there were people who you could trust, who had your back, who were unified in a common purpose, and who had put it on the line to get there. They had been tested, so to speak. That's why the military likes paratroopers, because even if you haven't been in combat, if you jump out of a fully functional airplane at a couple thousand feet, at least you got the nerve to do that. So that shows that that's above and beyond ordinary people that haven't been tested in any way at all. So I don't know about this Divine Nine nonsense, because there were only 8 that had a part in what went on that set the stage for a whole lot of things that we take for granted today. So the main thing, though, was this organizational base that Black America used for purposes of advancing what was known as the acquisition of civil rights and ending segregation. It wasn't integration, it was ending segregation. It's a different thing between having the choice to blend in and being told you can't get in here. That's like going to the park and seeing dogs must be on a leash. Dogs may run free, no dogs. That's the way it was. Colored must be accompanied by a responsible white. No colored allowed, or white people only, or colored okay if, colored only. This kind of thing was a reality. I experienced a part of it, and it was not something that any sane person wanted to endure. It's what happened to the Jews in the ghettos of Europe before World War II and during German occupation. It wasn't good.
So basically, a big part of what you're saying too is what they're doing today. These sororities and fraternities, they're not focused on the mission and the real purpose on why Black sorority fraternities even came into existence. It was to combat injustice politically, economically, socially, to help advance Black Americans. And that basically really, they're not focused on doing that too much now.
They are now exclusively focused on the cover story. So the cover story was camouflage. Like right now, what do they get famous for? They do these, they step, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I invented that. It was 1967. I was dean of pledges out in LA, and they had the frat games at Cal State LA where they'd have Lakers, Celtics, and et cetera, who were members of these frats, and they'd have these fantastic basketball games for 8 weeks. And I told the pledge line, I said, you're going to put on a show out there. So with my encouragement, and also Big Brother Bob Cole, who's now passed on, big football playing brother, they started at stepping, and everybody said, oh, that's cool. Wow. And then a lot of the people that had graduated from LA high schools who had gone back south to Tennessee State, to Fisk, to Spelman and Clark and Morehouse, etc., to Howard, they took it back with them. So that's how it started. So anyway, I know that part, and I'm not lying about it. I actually did it. But it's interesting because at that time we were having these debates of how far should we collaborate with what was beginning to be known as militancy. This is when the civil rights thing was dead, because there was no longer any need for the civil rights movement, since the United States had put in place every law necessary to do what was needed. And what was necessary was actualizing those laws and motivating people to do what they needed to do to step up, to get colleges and universities that were public in situations where everybody could utilize their resources instead of just being taxed and things being restricted and cutting them out of the opportunity to develop effective leadership. Now, somewhere in there, you got a situation where the effective leadership disappeared, and it just became self-serving, and there was no fallout to the impacted community. And then that morphed into 50 years of glorification of dysfunction from Hollyweird and all that stuff. And you get the Jasmine Crockett's and the Ilian, and you get the women of ill repute that never would have been allowed on screen when this thing was going on for real back 55, 60 years ago. And now you get self-serving nonsense where they think they're entitled to be in a position so they can utilize the offices for personal enrichment and for the benefit of their friends and not their constituents, and not for the purposes that a whole lot of people are now dead to have attempted to achieve. We all were required to memorize Invictus by Henley. I'm not going to recite the whole thing, but it starts off, out of the night that covers me, black is the pole from pole, black is the night. Out of the night that covers me, black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, my head is bloody but unbowed. We've taken beatings, but I haven't bowed down to it. And it concludes, it matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And now I see so many Negroes running around whining about they're not captains of their soul. Something, white supremacy, is dictating everything they do or controlling everything they do. They whine and their heads are unblooded, but they are very bowed and they're very scared and they are not courageous and brave. So I see that and I listen to stuff like this, and this isn't anything but perpetrating a hustle like so much on the web these days or in social media. Everybody jumps on a bandwagon trying to make money off of it and don't know what they're talking about.
All right.